Shall we talk about something that's been happening, brewing under, like sort of bubbling under? And this is with regards to Nairobi and the governing of Nairobi. Governor Johnson Arthur Sakaja has told of critics of his plans to relocate long-distance vehicles from the CBD. Speaking after attending a church service in South B yesterday, the governor said there will be no turning back on these plans. He hit out at leaders who faulted his decision to ban nightclubs from residential areas, saying improvement of residential areas and decongestion of the city is his sole responsibility as a governor. He also told critics to stop creating a rift between him and the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. He said, I respect the DP and I'd like to remind those speaking from different regions of Kenya trying to cause a rift between the county and the national government and Nairobi residents on tribal lines that they'll not succeed. There are duties for the county and the national government and we will work together. So, the decision to relocate long-distance PSVs from the CBD has put him at loggerheads with the DP, who asked him to consult before taking actions that will hurt the business of Mount Kenya people who overwhelmingly voted for him and others. So, basically the governor has said, look, we've got to work on a plan where those long-distance vehicles don't terminate within the CBD, but they terminate outside the CBD. Vehicles coming from Western terminate somewhere in Westlands. Vehicles coming from Mount Kenya terminate somewhere before they get to CBD. And so on and so forth. Look at all the areas where vehicles come from outside Nairobi. Now he says, let them not come into the CBD because they're coming to pile up and congest the CBD.
Yeah.
And this was the issue that Rigathi Gachagua, the Deputy President, took with. And he said, look. Before you go on and just say decree, look at the ramifications of this, the repercussions and the impact of that action. What does it mean? What does it mean to the people who are traveling? What does it mean to the businesses that are dependent on these people, on these vehicles coming to these areas where they come, the terminus? What happens to them? You can't just wake up and make some of these rules. You are basically just affecting business. I watched Rigathi Gachagua had an interview last night on Inoro TV with Francis Gashuri. And he was asked this same question. And he went at great lengths to basically explain and say again, look, if you talk about a place called Tea Room, very many vehicles from Mount Kenya terminate at that place called Tea Room. And he was saying, you know what? There are very many businesses that depend on this terminus. The fact that the Matatus are terminating here, if we just one day abruptly say, all those Matatus from Nyeri, Meru, like Kibia, Nyandaro, don't go to Tea Room. What are you saying? The people who are depending on the footfall from this, how do they survive?
Come out and then get into those vehicles and then from there go directly. And that means that people will lose out on both sides. Yeah. Those who are getting onto the vehicles and those who are operating the vehicles. That people will look for another option that will then serve them better than use yours. So they're businessmen and women who are losing out on that business. The congestion of the city, however, has been a bone of contention for decades. Like how people should be able to get in and out. The city should be your least congested place when you're looking at the movement of traffic. And it is upon that premise that the governor is saying, look, come on, guys, we cannot be dealing with this issue over and over again. Millions, hundreds of millions of shillings spent for this this terminus. We are going to use it in the way in which it was designed. We're actually going to use it. And change is not going to be comfortable in the beginning, but we're going to get used to it. And that is the way we're going to do it, to have an orderly city. And that is where he is coming from. It's not emotional. It's not about who's my friend or who is not. Are we trying to get Nairobi running? Yes, we are. From the other side, whereby you want to then pander to the whims of, or rather, the desires of business people who will see this as a real kick in the pants. If it happens, then that's where the other side is coming from.
You know, it's not the first time. Sakaja is not the first one to try and remove Matatus from within the CBD. This move has been tried before. Even trying to push Matatus to Globe Cinema Roundabout was a move of trying to decongest. There was a whole conversation about moving Matatus and taking a terminus to where before Machakos, and then there was, what's that place called? the old railways behind Wakulima Market.
Yes,
What's it called?
I could actually see it. I'm seeing it in my eye.
Muthurwa. Yes.
See?
Yeah, see, that's the one.
Okay.
We could see it in our eyes, all of us. Trying to move Matatus from Eastlands to terminate at Mudurwa. This Green Park thing of NMS of terminating Matatus at railways. These attempts have been made before. Why do they always flop?
Is it that we're trying to apply a Band-Aid to a broken leg? Because if the discussion is about modern transportation in the city, there have been plans in the past that well-documented plans about, say, light rails and other such accommodations, things that would accommodate more people and be able to ferry more people. I mean, the discussion we had, even with the PS for transport, right here, okay, with regards
to the BRT.
Yes. All these things are plans to try and decongest. There are those who had planned that, for instance, all the vehicles coming from along Thika Road, you stop at Kasarani.
Yeah.
Say there's a massive parking there that nobody even uses. Okay? And then from there, you get into some other form of public mass transport. Into town, that sort of thing. Now, again, all those plans, they sound good, but somehow they never seem to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay? So, it's not that plans don't go anywhere. No, plans are started by people, and if they don't go anywhere, some people have ensured it isn't going anywhere. Okay?
The anywhere is moved.
Yes, exactly. the anywhere is just extinguished, so it just ceases to exist, and a new conversation takes place. What is it about the need to have Matatus out of the city? That's question number one. And because at the time Matatus weren't there.
Yeah.
They simply weren't there. But they came in, and they're there. So how do you accommodate the interest, not the Matatu itself, the interest of that industry, so that they're part and parcel of this new change?
You know, we seem to have been caught up by the current state of affairs, where you have a multiplicity of players in a sector called the Matatu sector, the transport sector. So you have very many Matatus that ply a route. And so you have very many stakeholders that are involved. If you think about like those days when you're saying, when you'd have a bus that is crossing from one side to the other.
Yes.
A bus that's coming from Huruma and it ends up in Kawangware.
Yes.
And it's called a 46.
Yes.
Right? Crosses the city from one end to the other via KNH, because here KNH was now sort of a nodal
like a mini terminus where they're all sort of like interchanged.
Yeah. And all those other buses, others are doing 23, coming from, I don't know, from Westlands, crossing over all the way into Eastlands, into Jerusalem and the rest. These things worked. But because there was population was not so big.
Yep.
And
No, it
two,
wasn't.
there was a working system organized by the Municipal Council of Nairobi.
Yes.
And that's why those buses used to be called buses a municipal. Right? It was sort of a public transport system managed by one entity. Now we have very many entities. We have very many routes that have been created. We have very many areas where people come from. If you talk about a mass transport system, a bus transport system like what PS Hinga was doing with Thika Road, it would have ended into CBD. But then how do you create the other one that goes across the other side of town?
But you know, the
With no
industry,
lanes and such.
the industry itself has organized itself into what we call SACCOs. So they exist within SACCOs. Now, the question I asked earlier on was, how then do you bring this industry into not just the 21st century, but to meet the needs that we have, while also providing the decongestion that you require? Okay? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Because it's a question of the number of vehicles that keep coming in. And we know that if you had vehicles that could carry more people, it would assist. It's not that it would... You see, the decongestion of a city is not solved by removing Matatus. No. It's solved by a multiplicity of approaches. You have to have many forms of transportation within the city. Not one, many. Okay? That's where the discussion around light rails, transportation, the discussion about mass transportation vehicles, all these things take place. Now, the Matatu will have its role. Now, there are those who actually study these things and they understand it in great detail. And many of them have contributed to this discussion. And we have papers lying where such papers lie as to how we can actually introduce this form of transportation within the city. It exists. Is it the will that isn't there to bring about this change? Or is it, as usual, with the Kenyan Malays, the thing that bedevils us all the time, interests that are at play here? What are we dealing with? Because in this discussion came in the issue of electric vehicles?
Vehicles, yes.
Yes. Some even exist on our roads as we speak. This discussion came in. So the problem, Eric, is not that the industry has very many segmented No. It's the various interests. Matatus are just Matatus. The people in that business are just in that transportation business. That's what they're in. Mm-hmm. And if an alternative to what they have within their circles was provided, where money was guaranteed, are we saying that it could work? If the Matatu industry came from nowhere and it's working, it means something else could work, so long as people understand that the economic interest is taken care of.
I think there are people in that sector, CT, in the Matatu sector, current players and influential players who are the stumbling block to that movement.
Why do you say that?
Because, like you've heard many times before, the issue of creating a mass transport system, a mass rapid transport system for the city that will include buses, light rail and all, did not just start yesterday.
No, it didn't.
It has been there for a long time. In the Kibaki years, people were taken to Bogota and other places where the transport sector players, those who are in the leadership, actually went on a government-sponsored trip to Colombia. They went and looked at what Colombia has done. Bogota rolled out a mass transit system a long time ago. It works very well. They went to other parts of the world. They have looked at it. They've come back here. They've started conversations, but it doesn't move. If the sector wanted it to move, the sector would be spearheading the talk. But you don't hear the leadership of the Matatu sector actually spearheading the talk because of what we have seen working elsewhere. Actually, this thing can work here. And therefore, we have come together as SACCO ABCD. We have decided to, shrink our number of Matatus and invested into these bigger buses. And this is how our bigger buses are operating. Do you hear anything like that? You don't. So my issue is, I don't think it's government that is a stumbling block. I think it's the Matatu sector that's a stumbling block. The people who are in government in the Ministry of Transport in the Kibaki years are not the same ones who are there today at the helm. They are different. But the Matatu sector leaders are the same. And yet, this conversation is not moving.
For decades, it's been there. No,
the common denominator is these people.
Exactly. And here we are looking at a situation whereby they don't want to be uncomfortable for anything at any point. It doesn't matter what you bring. So long as it's going to pose an element of uncomfortability at any one point, they will oppose it. As it is with change. Change comes about and you have to tittle, this way or the other way. You're not going to like it. You don't want it.
Let me ask this question. If we take the view that the government actually is interested in bringing change, but they're being hampered by this grouping of individuals, who licenses them?
The government.
The government.
Who enables them to actually do their business?
The government.
So, is the government in a position to get them to do what the government wants?
It could.
Precisely.
With political will. Now, the thing is, how much leverage does the sector seem to have?
You see,
look at this move by Sakaja, right? And the reaction is not coming just from, the sector itself. In fact, the Matatu owners, Matatu welfare, and all these other Matatu things, associations, are quiet. Their spokesperson is the deputy president. And his angle is, no, this is affecting business. There are people who are going to suffer. They're going to do this and the other. Why? Why would the deputy president sit back and say, okay, there's an issue here? They would be the ones who are actually going to talk to the deputy president telling him, boss, actually this thing works for us. This thing is good. Let us support it.
if I were...
There is no political goodwill because the goodwill has been taken away by the leverage that the Matatu sector has on politicians.
What on earth would that leverage be?
Votes, influence,
For a moment
or
there,
money.
For a moment there, I thought you were suggesting that the deputy president owns Matatus.
I don't know. I don't know.
If people in the industry can understand with great clarity how their benefits will not be eroded, do you really think that that same position would still stay? Because there are those who've argued, and I've heard this argument before, that part of the reason why you find these exceedingly dilapidated Matatus on the road is because those who own them are police, members of the police service. So, they're the ones who are involved in arresting vehicles that are not. So if it's owned by such individuals, it's been said. The truth, I don't know where it lies. But there are some Matatus, you look at and you feel it is better to walk. Yes. Because boarding that Matatu can be a complete health hazard. All right? Now, what am I saying? The subject that I introduced when I first started, when I contributed, was one among the things I said was the issue of self-interest, which bedevils us at every stage of what we do in this country. There will be the conversation about self-interest, whether it is political, whether it's economic, whatever the reason is, but it always rears its head, and it seems to take over any discussion you may have, so that even the benefit that was supposed to be derived and the discussion around it is now pushed aside.
It's pushed aside.
Yes.
It's pushed, and even from both sides, even if you think about, so Governor Sakaja seems, and he says he's adamant that, he's got to relocate the Matatus from the CBD and they've got to start terminating elsewhere. What exactly is he building up to? Because I don't hear a proper, coherent plan that says that this is where Matatus are going to terminate. Is there any bus stop that from Westlands heading all the way to Limuru, where Matatus that come from that side would actually go and terminate? Where this is bus station.
If you look at Westlands, you see that road, the side road that leads into those business establishments on the side, that's what's become the bus stop.
Yep. So there's no terminus anywhere. So he hasn't built a terminus on that side. There's no terminus on Thika Road, where he says all those buses coming from Moyale to Garissa, to Meru, to Nyeri, Nanyuki, Isiolo, Muranga, all of you, this is where you terminate. You don't come into town. Is there anywhere where you've seen a conversation as Sakaja is saying, let's remove these Matatus from the CBD, where he's saying this is where they shall be terminating?
I haven't actually seen any.
Or from Mombasa Road, and he says this is where they'll be terminating. Or again, from Machakos and the side of Kangundo, and saying this. So what is Sakaja driving at? So that's the question you ask yourself. Okay, so what exactly is the game plan here?
And
if you've come from Moyale, you've alighted the bus at wherever, even if it's Ngara, how do you then cross over if you are going to Kawangware? How do you find yourself in Kawangware?
This issue of moving bus termini, it's a conversation that the bigger towns, whether it's Mombasa, Kisumu, maybe Eldoret, Nairobi, it's a conversation that has been had, because you will find that it's a discussion that is still taking place. Now, we know how the populations in these big towns increase. We know it's not something that cannot be planned for. It's something that can be planned for.
Yeah.
And the movement of these people, the service which is provided for by the Matatu industry, is a necessary part of all this. Okay? Now, I'm thinking, even as you're speaking, yes, this thing was put up at the railways. Yes, it's supposed to do A, B, C, D. Oh, we get all that. But will it solve the problem? I think not. It won't really solve the problem. Where's the comprehensive plan that says, look, phase 1, we're going to do this. Phase 2, this is what we will do.
Yeah.
And phase 3, because this thing of decongestion is not just about Matatus. No. It's also about people who own cars. How do you ensure that someone who owns a car will feel comfortable enough to take public transport, so they don't, all these people who need to drive into town don't have to drive into town? Because to say that it is Matatus that are causing the decongestion, that is not true. They are not the bulk of the vehicles
They're
we have.
not.
The bulk of the vehicles are the vehicles that are owned by individuals.
Yeah.
So how do you get people to appreciate the need of coming to work without necessarily driving their own cars?
If we were to talk about a public transport system, then it has got to be run to some degree by the public, and this is by government.
It has to be.
It can't be because people come together and they are running private sector and they are doing some circle. Those are the ones that will depend on
No.
to reorganize this
No.
thing.
They won't. Because change involves cost, and they may not be willing to go into that.
Yep.
When they're making money here, why would they now stop what they're doing, which is making the money, to go into something which is in the future, could make them money, as you say, but will cost them money first? Why?
Doesn't make sense.
That makes financial
Doesn't
sense.
make sense.
Let's take a break. It's 29 minutes to 10. We want to hear from you. 0719-012-600. Do you support Governor Sakaja's move to relocate Matatus out of the CBD? He says PSVs will need, long-distance PSVs will need to stop terminating within the CBD and they have to move elsewhere. And he says this gear, he's already engaged the forward gear. There's no stopping. There's no turning back.
He says he's done.
He says this is done. Do you support that move? Let's hear from you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Phone lines are open, 0719-012-600. The governor of Nairobi City County says Matatus, PSVs from upcountry need to do what? Stop terminating in the CBD and they start working from elsewhere. Courts have halted the relocation of Matatus from CBD to Green Park Terminus as the conversations continue because of protests from various people, including sector players and others who are passengers. So we are asking you, do you support this move to relocate the PSVs from the CBD? This is long-distance PSVs. Let's hear. Matunda in London. Good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you doing?
And the team.
Good morning.
I'm
Morning.
fine, thank you, Justin. Pardon?
Good morning.
Morning. How are you doing? The team there is doing very well with your discussion.
Asante.
Ndio tunaamka.
Aya, siku njema. Now, what do you say about this move to relocate the PSVs?
Well, I think the move to relocate the PSVs is very, very late.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should have been done, like yesterday.
Yep.
Every developing city or town or municipality
Yep.
has to have a transport system that enables the economy of the country to move in a way that is organized.
Mm-hmm.
Kenya or Nairobi and Mombasa, in the days that we were growing up, had an established transport system, the Kenya Bus Services, which was doing a very good work.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Kenyans being Kenyans, when the time reached for our people to manage the system, they decided to eat the entire transport system and, bring in the chaotic system that we enjoy today, which is the Matatus.
Mm-hmm.
You come to a small town or, call the City of London. It has an organized underground system
Yep.
of train. They have an overland buses, the London Bus Service, which is run together with the local county. And the government, the national government, puts in a bit of resources into it to make sure that the transport system works. It's not that we don't have private transporters. We have them, but they operate from outside the central business district. The long-distance hauliers, buses. I can get a bus from here to Manchester, from anywhere to any other town, but they don't come into the town center. The central business place is meant for people to do the other businesses other than just chaotic transport system, which is all over. You go to Nairobi, in the city center, you get Matatus all over.
Yep.
which don't give you even access for people to do other things that they're supposed to be doing. So we need to have an organized system, and someone has to come up. If Sakaja wants to do that for the city, let him be given the freedom to do it in association with the national government to make sure that we have a running and a well-managed transport system. The other players in the system can join in and buy shares and make money. I think that is what we should do and make sure that we organize Nairobi. You know, it's too late now that we are still talking about a transport system that works. We should have worked.
It should have
in the
worked
last 10 years, we had what President Kenyatta wanted to come up with, and I don't know where the idea died off to. But it is time that we have an organized transport system, which we do not have to keep on saying we keep out these vehicles out of the central business district.
Thank you very much, Matunda.
That's my take.
Asante sana for your take. 0719-012-600. Moses Nderito.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. How are you doing?
Very good. Hi, CT and you.
Fine, thank you, Moses. Good to hear from you. You're keeping well?
Very well.
Asante, and thank you for calling in.
Decongestion against moving the traffic jam somewhere. So if you move the vehicles from CBD to, let's say, Green Park,
Yep.
have you decongested the city, or have you just moved the jam from CBD to Green Park? And then that means Uhuru Highway and Hesalasi.
Yep.
Yeah, so one thing I have to agree with you, Eric. You know, public transport is a system. It's not a vehicle. It's a system. And even when you talk about those Bogotas and everywhere, yeah, all those cities, public transport is provided by the public sector, by government. It's not private. And where they're private sector players, government subsidizes. And that's why you find people moving to higher capacity buses. Yeah. So you can't tell a guy who uses a 20-year-old KAX Nissan Matatu going to Parkland that he's going to invest in a train or in one of those light trains.
Yeah.
How? You see, so we start at the wrong premise. We start by one of the things I agree with Sakaja. The only thing that's public in our PSV sector is the passenger.
Yeah.
When Nairobi worked, the government was a shareholder of Kenya Bus Service.
Yep.
So if you want to decongest, number one, government must be involved. So that BRC idea was good because it's government-led. Now, down the line, you can find how do you incorporate this private sector player so that you don't remove their livelihood. How do you incorporate them? How are we incorporated in Safaricom? By buying shares into this government entity. But if we are thinking that we are going to move Matatus from one place to the other, all you've just done is moved the problem, and the same thing continues.
Yeah.
And that's the way we've been doing that for the last 30 years with no success. Yeah, we've been doing that over and over and over again and expecting a different
result every time.
A different result. Even SGR. The next time you have somebody from the Kenya Railways, ask them if SGR passenger service makes money. It makes losses from passengers, but it's subsidized by the profit they make on cargo. Passenger service, London Underground, does not make a profit. It is subsidized by government. So public transport in a city is a social service, must be provided by government. If you want public sector to buy bigger buses, you give them concessions and you give them subsidies for when they run off-peak without enough passengers. There is no other way.
Then there could lie the problem then, because what you're doing is you're telling all these investors in the private sector to actually sit back and let government take over their business.
For example, where there's a private sector guy, he's given a timetable. You run on a timetable. If that bus has one person, it still runs. Let it go. Yeah, it's a big bus. Maybe it carries 60 passengers. It still goes. But however, government compensates for that loss. Now, if you tell a Matatu guy to drive his Matatu with one passenger, he can't make money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So government must be involved, whether we like it or not. Or otherwise, these are stories.
Big ones.
These are stories. stories.
You know, Governor Sakaja.
And show me one country that is successful. One. With a private sector model.
Kenya.
It's not successful. It's a complete mess. Otherwise, we'll not be discussing it.
It's chaotic.
It's not be discussing it.
Moses, I was about to just point out here that Governor Sakaja has picked up as an advisor somebody who is very well known and has been credited with changing a public transport system.
Yep.
This is Professor
in
Washington
London and in other places.
Ochieng.
Exactly.
He's the
I look
advisor
forward to
on
meeting
mobility.
Yeah.
So some of these moves that Sakaja is making are from the advice of Professor Washington Ochieng, who says,
So number one, he has to change the Traffic Act because he will find places where he'll be in conflict with the Traffic Act. He'll be in conflict with a lot of regulations and a lot of the city bylaws. He'll be in conflict with the act of what NTSA does and what Namata does. So we go back to what? A system. It is not an event. It is not an event. Okay. So one guy is not going to sort it out. It's just like you guys were talking about the economy the other day. It's not one thing. There are so many things that have to go into place, but we shy away because right now we are talking about the traders in tea room. I agree, but you guys are down Mombasa Road. You don't sell anything.
Yeah.
Who said then next will be the hawkers next to the side of the road. If you then create designated bus stops, you nadhulumu hawkers.
Yeah.
Come on, we can't. We have to agree if we want order or we want to play politics or we want to do nice, put out nice words and look like we to engage. It's called kizungu mingi na catwalk. It's a system. We agree. There's going to be some pain for some people, but there's going to be long-term gain. And it's not a 5-year plan. It's a 20-year plan. Nobody does a transport system that is a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan. You do a 20-year plan. So you're decongesting over 20 years. What Kina Kimunya started during Kibaki time, if they had started, there would be sanity today. But politics came, and we are back where we were.
We lost
25 years ago.
Moses, thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.
We want to hear from you. 0719-012-600. Do you support the plans to decongest the CBD by removing PSVs?
My mind is on that issue. So when we're saying that it's just a question, and think about it in terms of physics, right? When we say that we're trying to decongest the city by making sure that vehicles, start and stop at a certain place, are we sorting out the decongestion problem? Are we sorting out the traffic issue? Are we? Is that actually what is happening?
Without
by having
things
people converging at one place and asking everybody who wants to then use vehicles in that area to all then come and converge there as well.
Without working on other things. For example, if you say all Matatus on Thika Road should, terminate in Ngara.
Yeah.
You haven't sorted out many things.
This thing starts with the planning.
You've just moved the CBD to Ngara.
It starts with the plan, huh? And that's where, like those two gentlemen we had here who are planners, come in.
Yeah.
Because, believe me, part of what they do is understanding this very discussion we're having. How do you ensure that there's symmetry with all these moving parts? You're talking vehicles, you're talking private vehicles, you're talking about people walking the streets, you're talking about buildings. One of the things that has happened, over time, you observe, is the thing that has decongested the city perhaps more than anything else is the growth of the suburbs. For instance, someone who lives in Westlands, probably works there, never comes to the CBD. Somebody who lives, say, in the Lavington area, let's go to the east of the Nairobi River. If you work in the area of, say, Donholm, or you work in the area of Buruburu, you no longer need to come to the CBD to shop. You'll shop right there.
Yeah.
So now, if you have hubs that can actually contain all these human activities,
all the services that you need.
Yes, including where you actually work. You see, you move that human body. That human body occupies the Matatus. That's why you find them coming into town. That's why I say, I'm speaking as a layman. Now, somebody who understands the issues of planning and the details around it would be able to give a lot of meat to this discussion.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So that when you talk about decongesting, it's not vehicles, as Moses clearly put it.
Humans.
It's humans, and there's a system that you put in place.
Indeed.
Then all these things fall in.
Indeed. John in Nairobi, good morning.
Morning to you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I would like to contribute, and one of the things I would like to say is that I think this should be like a complete process put together before implementation, because moving the Matatus, or rather the long-distance vehicles, out of the CBD, then what next for the people? How will people reach those particular sections? I mean, what Sakaja should do first.
Yes, John?
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We lost you for a bit.
Paul, so the Sakaja should have all the stakeholders on board so that they agree on specific implementation guidelines. Because after moving these Matatus all the way to, let's say, Thika Road and out of the CBD, then what next?
Yeah.
I think the reason why is going to face serious issues with some of the leaders and some of the stakeholders is there are bottlenecks that has to be agreed upon. So he needs to bring the stakeholders on board, including the public. They agree on guidelines like step 1, step 2, step 3, with the timelines so that everybody's on board.
Yeah.
And I was actually telling someone that this is going to be a flop. So you can even see the DP is not agreeing with him. And I believe also other people might not maybe have spoken by now, but it's actually coming to be that people are still going to fight this, including some of the cronies within the private sector. So my recommendation would be come up with a plan, involve the stakeholders, and agree on step-by-step implementation. And I think that would be the best way to go about it. But for now, especially after the DP had prayed recently to his God, it's going to be really a tough time for Sakaja. It's going to be a tough time for him, but I think this is one of the possibly prayer lines that the DP put across to his God. Wish him all the best. Bring stakeholders on board and then implement one by one.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Peter says, it's about time to remove the Matatus from the CBD. Let the Matatu circles invest in high-capacity buses to reduce congestion. Abdullah says what?
Abdullah says, I support the move. We need a peaceful city, a decongested city, a clean city, and a city free from thugs. Sakaja can do it, and he is able.
This is going to take a while. I mean, just like Moses has said, there's an authority called NAMATA, okay? The Nairobi Metropolitan Transport Authority, that looks not just at transport within Nairobi, but within the Nairobi metropolis, which stretches all the way into Kitengela, into Ngong, into Machakos as well, towards Muranga and towards Naivasha. So it looks at all that. NAMATA is there. So we have NAMATA, we have NTSA, we have the Ministry of Transport, we have the Minister for Transport, we have the County of Nairobi and the other county governments of Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos, going into Muranga to some extent, and all this. How are all these working together? And I think that's where the conversation ought to be. So this ought to be the way the deputy president is saying no. He should actually be coming up with a solution and saying, actually, hold on.
What can we do?
How about? Because I have been given the job of coordinating county governments. How about I call in the governors of these areas and tell them, let's sit? How about I call in NAMATA and I call in Kipchumba Murkomen and I call in the others and I tell them, all right, how about we work on a program that stretches not just 5 years, where we can see results in 5 years for elections, but 15 years, 20 years. We begin now. We put it in place. NAMATA has the plans on the Nairobi metropolis and how it should look like in terms of transport. We talk about all these things. Oh, light rain. Oh, bus rapid transport. Oh, cycling lanes. Oh, this and the other. What can we start with implementation? Where can we begin?
Where can it begin? Look, and the thing is, just like you're saying, the plans must be all inclusive. And this is the thing, that half the work when it comes to something as delicate as this is that the buy-in from everybody who is involved across sector has to be 100%, or at least has to appear to be 100%. But the buy-in is just as important. That's like 50% of the work that must be done. The implementation of actually moving things, if you ask me, just because of the delicacy of this thing, is the majority of the work. That those who are involved, Namata, the organizations, the associations, because this thing is a huge monster that needs to be dealt with, and it has many heads. Most of the work is getting the buy-in from a lot of these folks to say, okay, guys, look at the good of the city overall. And if you have a city that works, you then, as an association or a sector, will benefit.
Yeah.
You have no loss to make here with operating within a working city. You're making losses when the city is not working. And so if you have buy-in from these folks, half your work is done. These bumping of heads that we are seeing now is because there's no buy-in. They've not been converted.
And we'll keep pushing. We'll keep doing this. Sakaja will not succeed in this move to move this. He may just get, for the first X number of months, Matatus moving. They will be back. Sonko tried it. They came back. Kidero tried it. They came back. It has been tried before. Kimunya tried it. They came back. Before him, Michuki had tried it. It's...
You know, Eric, just anecdotally speaking, it's a simple fact that privately owned cars are the majority of vehicles on our roads, not Matatus.
No.
Okay? So, you are going to have this conversation. You must have a comprehensive conversation about it. It's not just Matatus, it's vehicles. Because to argue that it is the Matatus that causes the congestion, that is a false argument. It's a completely false argument. Yes. And that's where you bring in the so-called experts. Now, this gentleman that he has brought in as an advisor, again, he has his work cut out for him.
Completely.
And he will be judged harshly.
Yep.
Yes.
He's called Professor Washington Ocheng.
Yes.
He is from the Imperial College in London. He's a big man in the UK. He's been given more and more roles. He is said to have been one of the people who designed the London transport system.
Good thing, isn't it?
So he's got the experience.
In London.
In London, of doing that.
Yes.
In London.
And it is successful.
Yep.
So we're seeing how we can color photocopy it.
And bring it here.
Yes.
Charles Hinga, the PS for housing, also has experience of working around the same thing in South Africa. Higher. Let's see how it moves.